Oh, and now for something completely different. Getting into the iPad. I just had this great idea to cover something on the iPad. Let me jump back to Jesus on going to the cross, and I never covered this. Just temporary. The guys who can't handle Jesus come back in 3 minutes. It's just going to be really quick. I covered Jesus was human and God on earth. That's if you're Christian, God with us. That was the whole idea. That's what the word Christ means. God with us. Christ wasn't Jesus' last name. Nobody knows who's Jesus' last name. I don't think people had Jesus last names. In those days they had lineages. They would associate themselves to their parent and the parent before them. And Jesus was of the lineage that was spoken in the Old Testament, in the Torah, that everybody would get up on the Moses seat and read the Torah. So the thing about Jesus is that there was something in the Bible where it said Jesus was like 13 or something, and all these rabbis were really listening to him because he was speaking at this. He had all this bizarre truth coming out of him, and they're like, "How are you doing this with the Torah before you? You're just bringing out. You're answering all these questions that have been boggling us." And you're 13. You're there's something special about you, dude. And there's some guys we've seen these people before. Then what are they called? Savants? Yeah, those guys they never amount to anything. I had a librarian who did become Christian. Her husband didn't. Her husband, great guy. She's she had quite a peculiar behavior. I'm not going to go into detail of them because I've also talked about them and other issues that were more reverent. But um, so mm-hmm, she said, and I don't think she's still alive. Um, she she was a teacher and she came in contact with many savants and said the big problem with savants is getting them to get over, and everybody faces this problem, to the realization, to come to the realization they have a gift and go out and and sharpen it. And there are those savants that are out there, like, they get so revered and so they get so polished and their ego just, the problem with big ego is that then you basically lose the capacity to like actually perform and use the talent. In the Bible, the parable, the talents, the guy who got the one talent, people think, oh, is it just a coin? It's a coin. That talent was a coin. A talent, if you look it up, is 66 pounds of silver, $18,000. And then you say, oh, he hid this in the sand. Then on top of this, it enters in the idea, the security that he would need to have that protected, the capacity to find a place to stick this. This is like something like out of some sort of crime story where a guy breaks, before he goes to jail, he goes finds some place to bury the treasure so that when he gets out, he can get it back and make away with it and live a fine life, even though he went through like 10, 15 years of prison. Not the same great thing, because this guy was like, I don't know what to do with $18,000. I'm going to bury it because then my master will come back and then I can just give back to him what he gave to me. It's called not using your talent. He gave you something, and he points out to him, you could have done this. You could have asked around, probably. You could have asked the other guys that got more talents. Maybe they have some better idea about how to do this. Maybe research it, what to do with a lot of money. And he said, why don't you go and put it with the banker, and then you would make back, um, some interest, because the banker is going to go out and loan it to somebody, and that somebody's going to pay them back interest, and then you're going to benefit from the interest that they're loaning that money to somebody else. Or the banker, if that person defaults, the banker's going to have to find money from somewhere. But you're going to he's going to basically sign a contract to give you money on top of the money. So the idea is, do something with it. You've got it. Do something with it. Don't just sit on it and think that it's something you have the capacity to that it's something that you have the capacity to use or not use. Because just as I was saying, the spiritual gift, do you hold it back? Do you hold it for ransom? Do you put I could that could be a way of using the talent to take the money from that spiritual gift and then go and give it to charity. I In my interpretation of good, it says do not hold back good. I think that holding trying to sell something is almost the same as trying to collect on the people that are going into the temple. It's really, to me, it doesn't even look like the first church, which to me I believe to be a commune, where you're pretty much sacrificing something of yourself to do it. And Paul was a tent maker in Corinth. He wasn't going out there collecting on his evangelism. And in this day and age, when evangelists expect money in some form or another, it really is not a good thing, because there's this whole capacity for other evangelists that are giving people the prosperity prayer, and people think that, hey, if I give this guy money, God will give me so much money in return. This is another attribute of psychopathy. I think I know this one. It's parasitic lifestyle. Yeah. God is a candy machine. It happens when people get super rich and all their friends start to assess their value based upon how much of that money's coming their way. They mistake the lavishness of being given money as being loved. The experience, the person who has the money in the first place starts to understand this really bizarre behavior from all their friends, where there was a time when the friends gave them unconditional love as a result of maintaining a relationship. Now they have money, and just as I was talking about homeless people not wanting to be in shelters, there are other people there who have this need to survive, or this need to get out of a situation, even to get to what they believe is the utopia, by stealing from you. Basically, this huge temptation, this whole huge challenge, especially for Christians who are in families where there's that rich father, and I can't even go there because I'm not collecting for my father. I'm collecting, as I've said, and that this is going to come out in the VR 180 I'm going to throw up. That I believe I'm collecting from a pot of money that was set aside and planned for, that somebody would benefit from, and it's almost no different to some extent than those Laxatives guys with the asbestos, and they're trying to they're trying to award the money they got in a lawsuit to somebody who has gotten disease as a result of being exposed to asbestos, and they're this is the responsibility of those lawyers to find these people, and they're going to be crooked people that are going to come in and say, I've got this disease, but then they have to prove it. And when they can't prove it, then that's liable, isn't it? You get thrown in jail for that kind of shit. That's fraud. But they've probably already experienced it. That would be a great thing to cover if you were a reporter. Go in there and cover all these people that are trying to collect fraudulently on these lawyers. You don't want to mess with lawyers. Lawyers will fuck you over so badly if you try that shit with them. Just because you're so willing to think that this concept that they talked about in the Bible, that you're going to live high on the hog at the end of your days and not do anything. This is the best that I can do. I can do better, but this is the least I can do, is do what I'm doing now, and mainly because I haven't researched it. I haven't really gone out and found out if there is something I could volunteer at. I left my job, and it was over policy that I disagreed with, because the red tape of trying to get stuff done in a corporation that has a fiduciary responsibility to its creditors will go in kicking and screaming on any kind of amount of costs that are needed in order to get the people that are working there the necessary things they need in order to do their work. And I was pushing that through by spending money while I was working. And it wasn't a job that I knew that, according to my trust, says that if I ever am gainfully employed, it cancels out the trust. So I can't be gainfully employed in perfect job, something working minimum wage. To me, I saw it as this social, like something out of a Tim, what's his name, movie. What is that guy's name? The guy that did Man in the Moon, that story about what's his name from Taxi. Anyhow, that guy, it'll hit me in a second. Jim Carrey. Sounds like something out of a Jim Carrey movie. I think it was the one where he's raising the black kids that are his own, and I mean, really just, they're calling him dad and he's calling them sons, and doesn't fully realize that his girlfriend was having sex with this guy who he misinterpreted as being really, he didn't misinterpret it. He communicated wrong, and the guy kicked his ass, and the guy was much smaller than him. I'm sure that actor really loved that role. I'm sure Jim Carrey loved to give that actor that role, and probably Jim was involved in the casting for that, because I know that guy. I've seen that guy. That guy is a comedian. That guy is effective. But in that, what was I talking about about Jim Carrey? The idea of me being like that guy that's in that was the chauffeur or whatever it was. He was a rich guy, wasn't he? And he said, this chauffeur job. I'm not doing this chauffeur for money. I'm doing this as a psychological social experiment. That was me. That was what I was. That was the realization I came to working as a grocery store clerk, was that I'm going to exploit this fucker on some level. And then comes this guy in who is like a manager type, who I had heard from one of the checkers that he was super mad that he didn't do well on his management exam and was taken out on the checkers. And he was going to spite me. He was going to give me the ultimate lesson of forcing this policy on him. And I turned around and I said, "Fuck you, I'm out. No 2 week, no 2 week lead time." The cruelest method that I could think of doing it. It's just unchristian like out the wazoo, and I haven't even gone back to the store. The store that's in my Vera 180s. I love the people there. I'm just afraid I'm going to see that guy again. Not afraid about seeing him again, but I'm afraid that I didn't have any effect. Okay? Because I was trying to get that guy to come to the realization that that's just not the way you treat people. Whenever you don't do well, you don't take it out on everybody else. I've learned that lesson in other respects, but having gone through it, and that's just not the way you treat people. And I was really just looking for an opportunity for somebody to really trigger me. And when he brought that policy on me, perfect. I've always been wanting to get out of this job. I've been looking for the opportunity to get out of this job. Not really a good thing because I'm not doing so well on money, and I'm probably going to get back into something like that, but it'll be a different store if it is Kroger at all. But sorry, Kroger. I don't work for you anymore. I can. This is free speech. I don't mean to do you any harm. This was just a certain case. It had nothing to do with you guys. I have a lot of respect for Kroger. I went and looked through the bread to see if I could find some cellulose in it because they do put sawdust into bread when they're trying to make cheap bread and give you fiber. There's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with cellulose. My father, who's the physicist, also a chemist, by the way, trying to make sense of that, said it's perfectly okay. Put paper or sawdust into your bread to give you fiber. It just passes right through. You could say the same thing about Olestra. But you know how that always comes out, how they always leverage the how they leverage the evil there. It's going to give you runs, it's going to change your bowel. And then I've heard people say potato chips will do the same thing to you. If you eat it fast enough, it will cause you to have a bowel movement. It'll cause you to have diarrhea. And that's the reason why people dumped Olestra, is somebody had some clever way of putting it through to people that it's a laxative. But the thing to realize is there's three kinds of laxatives. There's irritant laxatives, Ducalax, Cinna, the Cinna, the special castor oil, irritant laxative, mineral oil, completely inert lubricant, Metamucil, psyllium husks, jello, a kind of gelatinous mass goes through and isn't digested by the stomach. And do the doctors really understand this stuff? Whenever they talk to me, they said take Metamucil. They didn't say how often. They didn't know what to say. Doctors don't know anything about digestive tract. Find me a doctor who specializes in the digestive tract. I bet you a million that the furthest they ever come to understanding the digestive tract is what happens in various stages with the stomach and the sphincters, and what happens with the stuff that's protecting your digestive system from eating the rest of your organs. Should you get an ulcer that can be caused by bacteria when you're overstressed? They know about those things. They don't know how the digestive system really works. And that's what's leading us to this big old massive stupid fucking thing called bio. It's what people take kombucha for. You know it. You've heard it. You know what one of the best methods of that is? It's called a fecal matter to fecal matter transplant. It is how a baby elephant gets its productive flora by eating its mother's shit. True story.